Down the stretch, from the time that Pippen's three tied it at 85, you and Scotty got all the points.
Yeah, we play well. You know, we have the 1-2 combination all year long. And I've always said that, you know, Scotty takes pressure off me as much as I take pressure off him. So I'm MJ.
Fellas, I think we got a really good topic this evening. And before we get right into the topic, I want to give a little bit of backstory. I would think that we all saw the Colin Kaepernick Netflix DVD where he depicted that the NFL Combine was very similar to slavery. We had all heard of the term $1 Million Slave, the book written $40 Million Slave, written by William Roden. Came from a heckler calling Larry Johnson the $40 million slave because he said something about that in a conference. What I would like to know from you fellas is, do you feel that the sports today is similar to modern day slavery? And why do some people in our community feel that way?
Who wants to lead us off?
I think Ron got something to say.
Let's go, Ron.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
You don't want to go, sir?
Y'all gonna stop jumping me in there always first. Y'all go. Shit.
I mean, I'll go first like 90% of the time, but I'll lead us off. To be honest with you, to compare the draft to slavery is such a reach to me that I'm surprised somebody pulled the entire hamstring off. Like the tendons ripping and everything. Yes, I understand that they measure everything about it, but then like about your immeasurables, your hand size, your weight, your height, they check your heart conditions. But they do the same thing with the military. So are we calling everything where they check out your entire biochemistry modern day slavery? Are they calling, I would more so say college is more compared to that, because college, until just now, you didn't get paid.
Agree.
The NFL, end of the day, is a choice. Slavery was not a choice. Of course, they're going to say, but the owners make so much money. Name me a job right now where you make the same amount of money as your boss. I'll wait. If I own something and you're operating it for me, why would I pay you what you don't have that much skin in the game. Yes, you're playing. Yes, you're putting your life on the line for this money. But people play rec ball and get just as hurt for free. So you cannot convince me in any right of your mind that the NFL is slavery. Just like any job, yes, there are certain things you don't want to bring extra attention to. You don't need to go around doing stupid things, as well as these sick dudes that are doing domestic violence and other things that they don't need to belong in the league in the first place, to be honest with you. If you can't conduct yourself in a manner becoming of the highest standard of people, like where you're in the top 1% of a profession, why should you be able to have all these things against you and still be able to make millions of dollars doing something that 1% of people want to do, that so many people want to do? Everybody knows that 98% rule, right? They said 2% of all high school athletes make D1, 2% of all college make the pros. So yes, it is a select group. So it is a very elite amount of people that make that league. Slavery, they grabbed everybody. Yes, they breeded people to make the elite people that we have now. So we are the benefactors of selection of slavery, where they bred the best and brightest or the best and strongest, and they indoctrinated them into needing the master. But yes, then we can use that same argument. Yes, we need the owners for these people to make this kind of money in this league, but we are also seeing that all these indie leagues are also starting up. A guy I went to middle school with, he plays football in Brazil. He can speak the language now. So you can't, like, of course, the most money will be in the NFL. It's the most televised, the most partnered. But you cannot tell me that it's slavery when you don't have to play there. You don't have to do that job.
Marlon,
you're
don't
saying-
jump.
so-
Hold on,
Hold on,
Javon. Hold on, Javon. Don't jump out. Hold on, Javon. Don't jump. Don't jump, Javon. Hold on.
Go ahead.
You got something to say before I come back, Marlon. I'm going before Javon.
I'll
stand back.
So
I'm gonna sit back and listen. I'm gonna sit back and listen.
my thoughts are this. I understand there are aspects of today's game, and even in our society, right? There are remnants of slavery, and Jim Crow, and all the things that Black people have dealt with throughout American history. So I totally get the aspects of the draft and the NFL, even the way it's conducted, in the way that some of the owners, well, not some, probably a lot of the owners even view it themselves. Again, don't know, haven't spoken to these owners, so I can't say it. But a lot of them are old, rich white men. So they grew up in that age and era where they definitely have connections or even participated in some of that activity that was against Black folks in the past. So I totally get that there are definitely parts and remnants of that. But for me to sit here and say it's exactly one for one, heck no. I'm with Maul on that. It's not exactly one for one, because like you said, you do have a choice to play in this league or not play in this league. You understand what you are signing up for when you go into this league.
So your point, I'm just asking one question. Your point is you have a choice, correct?
The biggest point I would say, yes, they do have a choice. Whereas with slavery and American slavery, you did not have a choice. I don't know. Again, I wasn't there, but my understanding is slaves in America, Black slaves, did not have a choice to come here. Now, did something happen in Africa, something like that? I don't know. Wasn't there. Like, could it have gotten tricked and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to do such for you"? Possibly. So, did they make a choice to volunteer to get on the boat? Maybe. I don't know. Wasn't there for all.
Tidbit. Just some history 101, kids. Just gather around for 1 second. I ain't even gonna take that much time. We all didn't come here on boats. Some of us was already here, but Ron, go ahead.
True.
And now every American slave did not have options and was not paid. And there's different forms of slavery, physical, mental. But we're gonna get into that.
Exactly. Go ahead, Rob.
I hate your ball. I think this is such a. I think for some people this is a sensitive topic because certain terms people are really strong to it. Especially when it comes to like politics, religion, and then when you bring up the word slavery and everything, me and Javon, mainly Javon, study sports psychology and stuff. And so a lot of times you're like, you want to remove it, like, nah, this is nothing like slavery. Just because there's nothing like slavery does not mean that it does not have some similarities, not all. Like, yes, no one's holding you at gunpoint. Yes, you have a choice to enter into the league. You have a choice to leave the league. But let's not act like there's not similarities when it comes to it. And where did they get it from?
Yes, get your point off. There you go. Ding, ding, ding. You got some points.
You mean, right? Where did this stuff stem from?
I'll tell you where it stemmed from. Can I go?
Go on. Yeah, go on.
Well, listen to my words clearly, so I don't want nobody jumping the gun. I feel there's a huge reminiscence of slavery in sports. It derived from slavery. The first form of sports, Marlon, we can go back because we probably had this conversation before, where it goes from the Romans and was stolen from the Cushites, but we're just going to talk about history. Sports started with gladiators. We could talk about American slaves, since we want to break slaves down to specifically only American slaves, because slavery has been going on prior to America. But those slaves had festivals and their owners made money off of those slaves, which means it was a competition. And there's a huge similarity because it derives and originates from slavery. So when we say similarities, I'm not saying that it's the exact type of slavery. No, it's not. Things are different. Times have changed. It's a very familiar form of slavery, and that's why some people feel that way. We're not saying that they're shackled in chains and they're being whipped in cotton. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, when you compare a combine to a slave auction, there's a few similarities that make it feel very similar. When you go to a slave auction, you go on the podium and they basically show off your abilities so you can get selected by the highest bidder. In a draft, you go to the podium and they see your highlights and see your physical abilities to go to the highest bidder. That's a similarity. How you are being checked about all your physical attributes to see how quality the goods are, the product and all the things that you have to go through, the questions that they've been asking some of these people don't have nothing to do with football. Some of the bias and racism that we clearly already see that is in football. I'm not going to talk about 70% of the oil and the gold is Black people in football and basketball. But majority of the management is white. Majority of the fans are white. We're looking like just the entertainment of the world right now. We can get deeper and deeper to the roots of all this, but I'm not saying it's exactly the same. It's not the same trade-off. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a huge remnants and filling and similarities. So let's go into just not the draft, just a contract. You sign a contract, what's the saying? You are what to that contract? A slave. Some people might not like the term. Some people might not.
To the contract,
yeah, some people might not like the terms, but let's talk about the sports, football and basketball, which is a dominated Black sport, which is they sign these contracts and have limited options in what they really can do versus other sports. And I totally agree that college is definitely hands down felt like, what is that? That's basically male prostitution. You're basically giving away your body. You ain't getting nothing back. You're getting pimped. So that is a form of slavery. What is slavery? They were enslaved to use their physical abilities. They didn't have too many options. You can't tell me that every owner was the same. So you can't tell me that this owner did not allow his slaves to do X, Y, Z, travel, make wages, do this. So you're going off American history. We're not going to just talk American history or European or Western European writers told to us.
Mm-hmm.
But,
so I got a question for Maul. Maul, when you hear someone say, "Oh, you signed yourself to a slavery deal," do you feel that's absurd for a person to say that?
In essence, yes. I feel to say somebody to a slavery deal is disrespectful, because to bring in Javon's points, which I love, to be honest with you, he brought up Roman gladiators. Roman gladiators were prisoners of war, and then they were sold to the dominus or whoever was the head of the home that then used them in battle to gain clout to their house. They brought different respect to the house, and then as they rose the ranks, then they were then gifted. So yes, we did adapt that kind of mentality where somebody goes to a team and based on their performance, they are gifted in that right. If you're the best running back, you're going to get the best steals, you're going to get the best commercials, you're going to get the best endorsements, you're going to get the best incentives in your contract. So yes, when we look at things in comparison, they have similarities. But then again, stop. I'll tuck my hands away. When we look at them in comparison, they have great similarities. But then we realize outside of that, they have their individual, they're still an individual person. Like, yes, in American slavery, they gave you something to eat, somewhere to sleep, and possibly a roof over your head, depending on who was your master. So to say a contract that you voluntarily signed is a slavery deal that you had the opportunity to read over, as well as garner your own representation to then look over and interpret for you if you did not understand the terminology, to me, I find that to be disrespectful to the term slave.
E,
Yes,
I
in
got a
any
question. I got a question for E, but that's just a question for anybody. Hold up. Do we
Yes,
all
sir.
agree that slavery is not always physical?
Yeah,
Yes, I agree.
we agree.
Okay, so we all agree that slavery comes in different forms,
Of course, like you
right?
know, like I said,
So
look at the video of Steve Hart talking about the flea. Flea is 36-inch vertical, but if you put a cap on that and it starts jumping only to the top of that cap, it's going to pass along that genetic of jumping shorter than what is genetically indoctrinated to.
I gotta
So
say
anything,
no, but that is huge.
Hold up.
So just make sure you go back to that point. That's a huge point in the principle.
yes.
Go ahead.
I gotta say this, Marla. Your hands are so distracting. You got some big ass hands,
Chill. We're not doing this right now.
I'm over here
We're
thinking
not
like,
doing this
bro,
right
he
now.
would slap the shit out of someone with a hand. And I've known you.
Yo.
And I've known you for years. You know how many times I see you open up a doorknob and that's never made me think, oh man. Oh man,
Ooh.
oh man!
Hey,
If we ever open up another episode, or another pod, whatever. Me and Mom got a story about this one girl, how she stopped the door, her hand came around on the other side. Bruh, Marlon, remember our reaction?
Yeah.
We were like,
Hey,
Yo,
yeah.
all you saw was this on the door, like she just pow.
bro,
And he's
I
like,
was like, who the hell's on the other side of that door?
You just keep making him use that hand.
Great.
Hey,
But
to
no,
your
I put
to your point, Marlon.
Hold on,
Good
let
point.
me answer Javon. Marlon has a valid point, but there's also going back to what Javon has been saying, and I'm gonna piggyback on him this too, is where again there's different forms of slavery in the sense of like, prime example, there's mental, then there's physical, right? There's also, we were having a discussion, pre-showing this, that, just because, we got professional athletes getting actually paid, slaves are getting paid back then too, but just in different forms. Not the exact form in the sense of a dollar amount, but they were getting paid.
I hate like they would get
other
permissions and things of yes.
Yeah,
There were some slaves who bought their freedom. So how do they earn the money to buy their own freedom?
Yeah.
And we can say
Again,
that indentured
yeah.
servant versus slave. Indentured servant is a mild term for a slave, for how the slave is being treated. We all know that American slaves was treated the most extreme. So we compare slavery. We compare slavery to really American slavery, but slavery wasn't always just Kunta Kinte, you got your ass whooped and you lit in the barn. Because you got you got house ninjas and you got house niggas and you got field niggas. And we in the field, we talking about the
white people that were servants. Yeah.
Yeah.
They worked their way into getting their way to America.
And the house niggas were light as Marlin.
Nah.
But again,
You'd be surprised. Like, look at the movie Django. It was not just
I knew you wanted to bring that up.
Light.
Mm-hmm.
But no, think about this. If you have
it's joking.
No. I just want to bring an example. If you got a mistake you made, say like a child out of wedlock, do you want that in the house? Where your wife can see it?
Yeah.
So you want a mistake your wife can see in
front
of her every day.
I'm just playing.
I'm not even messing with this one, guy. We passed this question.
All right, we passed. All right, we went.
But
I'm gonna answer the
way.
question correctly. No, I'm not dealing with. No, I'm not doing any of that. Yes, correct. Move on.
So okay,
but,
back to regular schedule program, fellas.
What you got to say, DJE?
What I'll say is this, like to Javon's point and Maul, because again, what I stated in the beginning, I believe, yes, there are remnants and similarities, but that's with everything in our society, especially in America, because it's such a part of American history. So there's similarities of slavery or the effects of slavery throughout all facets of things within our society. So I totally get how people can connect the dots or say this is similar to that, or I think this is modern day slavery, but at the end of the day, it's not. At least in my viewpoint, and like what Maul was talking about. So again, I can sit here and point out and pinpoint little things that say, "Oh, this is similar to that," but at the end of the day, it's not slavery. It's I think what Maul's trying to say.
It's not the slavery that you compare to the whips and chains. But let's break it down to some a little bit more understanding. Social control theory is a form of mental slavery. If you want to know the theory, look it up. Do your research, do the references. We go back. But in the Black community, you only feel, or most of us, or the feeling that we have, is that the only opportunities that we're going to have to get out are sports and music, which is entertainment. Most people don't think that they're just, oh, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or entrepreneur. We don't think that way. That's not what we've been indoctrinated to believe. There are some who find their way out. There's some who make better decisions. There are some who be themselves and they do exactly what they was born to do. But that brainwash mentality, which is slaves were brainwashed because they could have overcome at any time and they had any time to make a decision. When we say they didn't have an option, you had the option to fight. You had the option of flight. You had the option to die. Those are options. And you outnumbered them. So that's mental slavery, regardless if we talk about physical, because they could have overcame that. Go ahead.
So to that point.
No, I got more, but go ahead. You put your finger up. Go on, say your thing.
No, I want to say something to that point. So I agree with you. There is the what you were saying, brainwashing, correct? Mm-hmm. And so you're saying that today's athletes or modern athletes have some of that brainwashing, therefore they feel there's no choice or no way out but to go into sports.
No, not modern athletes, the Black community. I'm not blaming it on just athletes. This is a brainwash in our community.
Okay.
So what I want to say, yeah.
But will we say that is more of a modern way of thinking? Because nobody was making money in athletics the way they are now, say 50, 60 years ago.
You're right, but it's harder. You have a higher percentage chance of being a doctor, a lawyer, or entrepreneur than you are to make the NFL. But for you to only think that my only way out is music and the NFL when everybody's trying to be a rapper, the highest percentage chances is to actually do something different. But most of us who in this podcast is play sports. So you put all your life behind sport. You put your life behind the traditional entertainment all your life to become an athlete or some professional sports star. But then our kinfolks is telling us always have a backup plan, right? Yes, you have the right people behind you. They're telling you to take advantage of these opportunities and these physical gifts that you have. But the mental part of it is that we think that that's the only way, and that's what we focus on, and that's what we do. And there's so many other things that we could have been doing. But even though you're making money as an athlete, that money ain't really real money for real. Like, what are athletes doing? Like, have anybody bought any farms and own any hospitals or own anything that can help us with healthcare or agricultural things? No, it's 700.
Jump in.
Is that brainwashing or is that ignorance?
Ignorance, but
I wanted to get it.
Who created the industry? Who created the society that we live in? Who colonized?
That comes down to the media.
But who created the media? Who's behind all of who's behind all of the things we're talking about?
And ancestors of those who brainwashed others before us.
Yes.
The lucky thing the kids have now is the age of the internet. So they're able to see that the other ways to get out. Before, the only way we had to see is cool is sports and rap. So you're able to see that you could be a cool doctor. You could be a cool teacher. Before, we didn't know teachers. Like, they got the guy a couple of years ago. He's even all over the news sometimes on Helen Zell. This guy, he has a bond with his kids, and he promotes that you can be cool and be a teacher. You can make it out and have an impact that way. We have more options.
shout out to Marlon for what he's saying right now, because I'm not going to disagree with nothing you're saying right now. I give a shout out to a couple of dudes who gave us some references for always kind of giving us a pre-debate on this. I gotta give a shout out to Dre. I want to give a shout out to Milton. I gotta give a shout out to my heckling ass family who rapped to me after like every episode. But
Hey, I'm stupid. Don't you go. I'm stupid. Maul. So remember, I'm stupid. So I gotta jump before you. I gotta jump.
Right.
You're not stupid. You're not stupid. I got a little retardedness to me. So if you start talking, I'm gonna lose what I got to say to Maul. Let's get back to this kids thing what you just said, right? About how that we do too. We have access to the internet to educate ourselves too. But we can also say we're in a day and age too that the media is providing more distractions as well.
Sports has always been
They control what they put in front of them.
No, not just sports though. I'm talking about like other things. Like now you got people who want to be Instagram stars.
Yeah, that's what they feel is their way out. They want to have influence over others. They are trying to find the next wave.
But I'm to answer your question, then, when you're saying that, they now have, make sure I'm answering this correctly. You say they now have like the access to to the answers of the past, what you said?
So, I mean, they have answers to now not only the past, but other ways to branch themselves out outside of sports. I mean, we would look at somebody crazy.
I agree with that.
Yeah, we look at somebody crazy.
And that's why I plugged in. That's why I plugged in Dre, and that's why I plugged in Milk, because we was talking about these statistics the other day. Yes, there are more Black African Americans who have graduated from college. There are less, I don't know what you want to call people, Black, African, Indigenous, Aboriginal, whatever you want to claim to be, but less of us going to jail. Some of these numbers have been changing, been skewed, but there's some other numbers that are definitely serious that I don't know if we want to really get into, but we definitely going to probably get into very, very, very soon. But the, straight Black men is being attacked right now, but we're going to talk about that in another whole situation.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But that was my whole point in asking that, though, is because I think there was a kind of a switch in the mentality, because prior to, I think, maybe the late 70s, you did have people promoting being doctors, going to school, getting an education, all that, and people were doing it. I think it's more of a modern thing now, or at least in the early 2000s and up to now, where you have people thinking that, hey, my only way is to be, like you said, a rapper, an entertainer, or athlete. And like you talking about now, is that mindset again seeping into the young kids and this later generation of thinking that's the only way out. Now you're seeing people with the internet and social media looking at other opportunities there. But for probably the late 90s through the 90s and through the early 2000s, it was just what you're talking about.
I think some of it is also a decline in football. A lot of kids is not playing football the way they used to. Football, there's a lot of kids who are not playing tackle football into the age of like high school. The averages of like when we were playing football, we were starting off at Pop Warner. So that's why this boom of wide receivers is starting to be such a thing, because they've been playing in flag football and everybody wants to be a wide receiver now because that's what they've been doing growing up. But back to what we're really focused on, I'm not saying that every athlete is a slave. I'm saying that this was indoctrinated and originated and derived from slavery.
I'm not saying that athlete is a slave either. I'm saying that
the
organization, the NFL organization, the company have similar they have similar protocols, similar foundations that was taken from slavery.
And a lot of
the draft, I see what you say. The draft,
and a lot of like one of y'all said, a lot of those owners who are old enough to stem from slavery, they ain't too far from the tree. So
right.
because you even hear Chad speak about it, right? Like when Chad was talking about like him wearing his Hall of Fame jacket, he said he'll induct himself, right? And he was saying the term is, I wasn't about to be their good old boy. You've heard that term a lot in the sense of slavery times, in the sense of that terminology, that wording being used, of being like, you can say like, I'm not going to follow the rules. I'm not going to be one of their good old boys.
I mean, you conform to somebody's rules. It's up to you when you make that decision. So we could talk about the decision of slavery, and we could talk about, it's not slavery because somebody made a certain amount of money. We could talk about it's not slavery because, they had options and choices. But, there's a lot of mental slavery. There's a lot of physical slavery. When you sign these contracts, you're basically physically locked down to whatever those rules and obligations say. So
football is probably the first sport I think about where there's lack of freedom of speech, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have so different sports have different privileges.
I mean, but that's with several different things in our society, like jobs. You work for somebody, you in the military. I mean, so are we calling all those things slavery or a form of slavery?
I mean,
I guess you could
everything
if you
derived from slavery. So
so like I said, there's remnants, there's pieces. But that's why I can't personally sit here and just call it flat out slavery. I can say, yes, there are remnants of that.
I think the remnants is because it's a sport that's dominated by Black people. That's what makes it feel that way. If it was a different percentage of people, it wouldn't feel that way when you have this minority group who doesn't have ownership, who is not really allowed to get into ownership, who doesn't even really allowed to get into upper management. And look what it says. It says owner, like ownership. What does that mean?
Economics.
That means we won't be talking about terms, because we're talking about the terms that started about a term, which is slavery.
Hold on now, Javon. Don't give
was a slave and you was a slave, and then you was owned. And when you talk about upper management, you say ownership. So there is some reminiscence. This whole game is built off slavery. This whole country was built off slavery.
Yeah. Sport in general was built off slavery. We won't go there. Sport that is widely broadcast is collective of the best and then put on for the masses. How are the best of the best determined? Through putting slaves through combat and putting them in front of the masses. So yes, we have remnants of everything. Even as the original point was, the combine, it takes everybody's measurables. It actually has saved some people's lives in these modern days because they found a lot of people aren't going to the doctor.
Yeah. So
they find medical issues that they would never have found if they weren't trying to go to the league. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole other point, of course. But I see at the end of the day, there's going to be remnants of slavery in anything to be dealing with Black people in the United States until forever, to be honest with you.
Till things change.
Right.
Until things change, until we phase out, or people who are old enough to remember all of these things.
So how can we make change?
There we go.
Making change, to be honest, it starts together in our community.
Right.
We put money into different programs, into engineering programs, into STEM programs, into music, into arts, because those are other things that people can do to elevate their mind outside of just worrying about sports.
There's so many kids. That is good, but I'm talking about the solution to the sport problem. How can we change the feeling that these dominated sports by Black people who generate most of the money, who put their lives and physicality, their bodies on the line? How can we have the player control leagues, balance in these sports?
Player control leagues.
Player control leagues.
Right.
So just like have these.
I think the way to create balance is for us to have more ownership. We have to own things. If we don't own anything, we don't have control. Because I can't be mad at a man who hires somebody who looks like you, Ron. My bad, Ron. I can't be mad at somebody who hires somebody who looks like him. You feel me? Who's common to him. So I can't say that every.
No, his
We can hear
headphone
you.
must have.
We can
His
hear you.
headphone.
Oh,
We
you
can
got
hear you.
Yeah, we hear you.
You had to have a trip out moment. I mean, it wouldn't be right.
You shut your old ass up.
I know you're not talking with your old ass bucket hat on.
Hey, you're right. You're right. Hey, Jeffrey, don't you say shit. Don't you laugh down there. Anyways.
Hey, E, somebody said you look like a golfer last week.
Yeah, had my polo on.
Straight off the PGA tour, bro. I swear to you.
He looking straight like Jeffrey from Bel Air. Nothing new Bel Air either. But anyways, I think the first thing when it comes to topics like this, when it comes to slavery, race, is the first thing that needs to happen is having platforms like this and actually talking about it. You mean not avoiding it? You feel me? Not being gun-ho on your beliefs. You mean, actually sitting back and absorbing what other people have to say. So that's where things start to grow from there. Because if one of us decided to come into the conversation yelling, cursing, and headed into the different direction, there's no growth. And so guess what? When this airs, that's something that people are going to see that this shit's never going to grow.
That dialogue, right? Bro.
Right.
Having that dialogue.
Right. Because the thing is, like, when we're talking about ownership, that's like, I'm just shooting something out there. That's like probably chapter 10 of a book. We first got to get to chapter 1. Chapter 1 is, let's talk about these things. Because that's another thing that's been going on around the world too, where you got certain schools now that's not trying to talk about Black history no more.
They never did.
Oh, critical race theory.
Right, but I'm saying we're
gonna get deep, bro. Just we ain't got time for that.
Right,
man. We're gonna get deep into a whole abyss.
Yeah. Right.
To jump to your page. Go ahead, Ron.
But before we go, because I know we're about to close and everything. What's going on with everyone? Maul, you're a realtor. Where can people find you at? What's your company? What's up?
You can find me with Exit Realty Perspectives. You can look me up on Facebook, Instagram, Agent Maul. I'm all over. You know what I'm saying? Getting recognized by Home Snap out here. People are viewing the profile. I see y'all looking. Hit me up. Let's go see a house. Let's go help you sell your house. Let's upgrade. If you want to pay less, let's downgrade. Move laterally. Where you want to go? I got you.
E, you next. Where can they get these bennies from?
Find me on. Well, they can't find me anything from me on right now. So until I finish what I'm doing right now, I'm low key. You can find me right here. Subscribe and listen to us on this podcast.
Yes, sir. At that. What's the Holiday Inn where you at?
Right. Got to keep some decoration in the background for the audience.
Yes, sir.
And currently, right now, you can find me at Capstone Performance. You can also catch me at Bishop O'Connell High School as one of the wide receiver coaches, and also a DB coach as well. You could DM me at Coach Mills. You could also DM me at Bullies.
Bullies.
Yeah, bullies. I breed bullies. Maul, you know how I rock. Javon, you know how I rock. E, you call
silverbacks, boy. I swear to you.
We heard about it.
You call a little glimpse of me. This past tournament, whew, I was on one.
Man, you can find me anyway. Obviously, JTM cleaning. I mean, I got so much to plug and so much to talk about. It used to be the plug, but now So JTM cleaning, LLC. I'm in the fitness industry.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie.
So I definitely.
That was low key creepy, low key pimpish. He was like, "You can find me." You saw how the hand dropped. Anyway,
you can find me in St. Louis.